Hey, welcome everybody. It is the Football 360 show back at you. Thanks for being with us. I am JP Rock. He is Matt Bierman as usual. Beautiful Tuesday afternoon. Your fastest hour football talk, your football Tuesday fix. How you doing, Matt?
Doing great.
Gorgeous day outside, man.
Yeah,
Hopefully, I know that you're busy and I know you got some stuff going on, but hopefully you got a chance to spend some time outdoors today.
limited, but it's
Limited?
always nice at the facility. We got the doors up in the morning, so you get
Nice.
nice,
Oh
cool air
man.
coming in.
It's beautiful, nice sunny day. I don't know if you like run. I know you got a knee issue
Yeah,
though.
I'm fighting a knee right now,
You're
man.
playing hurt.
I walked on the treadmill this morning and then did a little bike. But
Yeah,
yeah,
but get outdoors, do a walk, do a
fresh
run,
air.
play. Work in your garden, sit on your deck and drink whatever it
Yep.
is. A Coke, a water.
Yeah,
When I
hydrate,
say drink, yeah,
hydrate.
hydrate. Is what I mean. But man, just such a beautiful day. And I know we're busy, but I always
It's
try
that
to.
time of year, man, and you gotta
It's
love it. And it's living in the Midwest. You get the fall and the spring are just so perfect, right? And we
yeah,
fought through a bunch of crap this summer, and the winter wasn't great, and so
right.
it's always nice, and I think it makes you appreciate especially this time of year with football.
This time of year, it's the greatest time of the year.
Yep.
Heading up into Christmas. But I was having this conversation with somebody about living where we live, and I'm like, I like having all four seasons.
100%.
They might not be what they used to be when we were kids, but
Yeah.
it's still all four seasons.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, football season. But
Summer.
I know when we were kids. Like I always tell our guys, like, and it's funny because they're probably like, yeah, sure. But obviously the seasons have shifted a little bit. Like it seems a little bit later, but like my sophomore, junior, senior year, it was at the end of October. We had already gotten pretty good with snow.
Yep.
Like and real cold temperatures.
Oh yeah,
And obviously that seems like that's kind of pushed back into that November,
a
December
little
timeframe.
bit. Although last Halloween, man, it was frigid out.
Yeah. So
you had to have your fire pit going out on
That's true.
your driveway to
right.
give the candy to the kids.
That's true.
Yeah, so it was pretty brutal. I'm waiting for that. That's what we usually go from being really hot. You'll be one game and it's super hot, and the next
Yeah.
week you're all parked up.
Well, this past Friday was kind of a bizarre one too, because you get the remnants of the hurricane.
Yes.
And you get that more tropical feel.
Yeah.
And the wind, some of the wind at those games was like, it sucks because you work all week and it was interesting watching some of the games. Some guys got nailed with rain. Some people didn't get nailed with rain, but the high winds I think were pretty much
they're pretty
across
consistent.
the board. We had a game Saturday and it was not horrible, but it was like those gusty winds across the field.
Oh yeah.
If you like to throw the ball, that obviously is not as much fun throwing the ball in those conditions.
Right. Although I saw a clip of Braden and he looked pretty good.
Yeah, we had a good result. We had a good team win, and it's that time of year. We're halfway through our season. We only get 8 games, which it's fun. It's always good though when you played a really good opponent, and it's always good to have a battle with a team that takes it as serious as you do, and they're it's fun. It's fun to compete against people that want to
find out how good you are.
Right, it is. And I think that there's sometimes people get lost in the
wanting
the enemy
win.
And this and that. And it's like at the end of the day, God love having a good opponent to play, right? Like that's going to battle with you. I think that's really important. And win, lose or draw. I think it's really good for kids to experience like being in a contested battle that the other team wants to win is just as bad as you do.
Without question. And luckily we're seeing some of that. Some of that in college football this past weekend. Some
Heck
great
yeah.
games. I know we're going to talk a little bit of Alabama, Georgia. I mean, it's their world and everybody else is just living in it. And I hope everybody kind of realizes that.
Well, yeah,
they're just a different.
Well, you start looking at the level of athlete on the field, and then you ask yourself, can I compete at that level, right? Yeah. And I was around Carson Beck this summer and Jalen Milroe. I saw them both this summer down in Louisiana, and both good-looking athletes. I mean, Beck is tall, thin, but it was interesting watching that dynamic in that game because they were just battling, and things were not going Georgia's way,
right?
Not going Beck's way. 3 interceptions, and they battled back. And what it's funny, I was talking to someone about it, and I thought, for the SEC. What a great scenario for them because say Georgia gets blown out and it was a runaway victory, right, for Alabama.
Yeah.
Then suddenly Georgia becomes like and they fall out of that top 5, they're top 10 probably, whatever. But they fall out of it because it's like, oh, they're not real serious, right? And then they battle back, and you're like, damn. So now Alabama gets the benefit of beating that top team, and then now they're,
and
they
I'm
didn't
sure
fall too far.
and they're probably going to see each other again.
Yeah.
I mean, just the way things. I mean, think about the SEC though. Man, you want to talk about having it going? I mean,
They're stacked.
I mean, Ole Miss fell out of the top 10, I do believe.
Yeah, they
but
lost.
They were replaced by another SEC team. Mizzou popped back in there. It's funny how that works. Mizzou don't even have to do anything in there.
That bye week, yeah, they
don't have to do it.
someone else.
They
a few weeks
win
ago
and they
did.
drop, and they're a bye week, and they move up. And then of course Georgia, Alabama, Texas. It's just
Stacked.
absolutely crazy. But that's really
And then Tennessee. You got Tennessee
yeah,
too.
I know, and they get. I mean, and you want to talk about a dynamic offense.
Mhm.
I see where people are saying, "Oh, that they're the best offense in the country."
I love their offense.
Josh Heupel, man. I mean, he's a dude. You saw it coming. I remember when he was at Mizzou as the offensive coordinator, and you knew what was coming.
You knew that he was not going to be around very long.
Oh
either.
no, you saw, and I mean that was Barry Odom. I mean that was just a great staff that he had right there. But there have been a lot of Mizzou assistant coaches. I mean, Josh Henson, who I think is at USC right now, he's
one of
another
the top
guy
guys
who I always thought and think should get a shot at being a head coach.
Bush Hamden, who's down in Kentucky now. I mean, he went from Mizzou to Boise State.
Yeah.
They killed it. He comes back to the SEC. Now he's the OC at. I mean, they battled with Georgia.
Yeah.
Then they battled, and then obviously they just beat Ole Miss, but that was a battle, and they did it at Ole Miss, and it was good to see because he's a salt of the earth guy. People love him, but if you start to look at some of the coaches that have come through Mizzou that are now, making their name other places, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think it's good to see.
And there's still more coming down the pipeline.
Kirby Moore, I think, will end up being, this would probably be his last year at Mizzou. I would assume he'll be somewhere else.
He's another one, and you got some former Mizzou guys on Barry Odom's staff who are probably guys. I know Michael Scherer is a guy who already people are talking about. Is going to be groomed towards being a head coach.
Yeah,
which is really kind of fun. I mean, isn't that funny? I mean, we've known him since he was a little kid.
Yeah,
and so now he's like.
It's cool to see. And then down at Josh Heupel, you have Alec Ablin, who's another guy known since he's been a little kid.
Kevin Pendleton.
Yeah.
A guy Kevin Pendleton, who I remember was like a sophomore. He's running off the field and I stop him and he's being a big goofball. Kevin, hello. And he's like, you want to talk to me? I'm like, yeah. He's like, why? I go, because you're going to be a D1 prospect. He's like, I am? I'm like, yeah, you are.
Yeah, you are.
I'm like, if.
Just gotta keep working.
You got to do this stuff, and of course now he's also on that Tennessee staff, and I mean they're just everywhere.
And that's an important thing for players too. If a lot of guys are at college because they want to play football, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to think beyond football, right? And what you want to do for your career and playing the game, right? And I think a guy like Alec Ablin, a guy like Kevin Pendleton, a guy like Michael Scherer, those three guys in particular were probably admired with how they handle their business as players, which coaches are always watching. They're respected by the coaches. Maybe they're the best player. Maybe they're not the best player. It doesn't really matter.
Don't have to.
You're in the club.
Yep.
Okay. And so when those guys like a Josh Heupel leaves and you become a GA, which Alec went down, I think he GA'd at Ole Miss and, kind of did his thing. But there's a relationship that you build as a player that then allows you to then make those connections with coaches if, say, you want to stay in coaching. Some guys get out of football and they want nothing to do with it, and that's great. I mean, there's plenty of those guys that just end up being fans or coaching their kids' teams or whatever they might want to do. But from the perspective of going and, like, if you have a goal of being a coach, you have to be pretty organic about it. You don't have to be super strategic. Like, you just got to handle your business,
right?
Build good relationships, build respect within the staff,
learn,
and then
always be learning.
Figure out, don't just be a teammate, be a part of the team so you can, build those relationships. And then as that person, rises and takes other jobs, because that's what these guys do. They're like gypsies. They move all over the country. I mean, you got to want to do that.
Right. And the networking part is so huge because that's really how you get jobs.
Correct.
It's who who you develop that relationship with. I mean, it's you're not going to just come out of left field and people are going to pick you up. And I mean, we see guys all the time. I mean, a guy who, and I tell these guys, when they're playing high school ball, I'm like, hey, have you ever thought about going into coaching
Yep.
after football. And you can find it. Talon Chandler's a guy like that.
100%.
And he even says that's what he wants to do. Well, you could see it, because he was basically a coach on the field. He was a coach while he was training. When he trained at Elite, he was coaching the other guys up.
He would come in early and coach kids.
Yep.
Right. And he volunteered to do that and wanted to get reps but there's no greater way to learn something than by teaching it. Right. So if you can teach it, it really helps a ton. But yeah, he's a guy that I really, I could see him coaching for sure. But that strategic play, right? Like being a good player, you can certainly translate that into a career path. And so I look at our group of guys, our coaching tree at Elite is probably second to none in the training business. Like it is significant. We have guys that are at NFL front offices. We have guys that are scouts. We have guys at the NFL level. We have guys that are obviously college coaches. We have guys that are Division I, FBS, Power 4, all that stuff. We've been really fortunate to have really good guys that come through, but that started developing a love of the game of football, right? And then as they got older, hey, I want to make this a career path, right? And so I think a lot of that's a pretty cool thing to see that these guys that we have trained have been a part of our program. We have guys that are GMs in the UFL and things like that. I mean, it's pretty cool, like to see that. And there's plenty more to come. We got young coaches in our staff right now that are kind of getting themselves together and getting some high school experience, and then they're strategically moving through. But when we're at the Lindenwood camp, I mean, I had 3 guys walk up to me last year that I did not realize that had gotten into college coaching that were kids that we trained. They're like, oh my God, I'm coaching. Yeah. And they're like, hey, how's it going in Elite? And, I love getting my start there. So again, for us, what does that do for our players? It's great. We have guys that know our product, know what we do, and they can trust what we're giving them and telling them about kids, which then helps the recruiting process, right? And so, like, say a guy, for instance, gets a job at a MAC school, whatever. He's like, hey, I got a connection into St. Louis. Yeah. I know the guys at Elite Football. They train all the guys in St. Louis. You think that doesn't help? I mean, like I had a lady call the other day. And we were talking about her son, and she made a comment. She's like, "Hey, do you guys have any success with like kids that have come through your program?" Which they want to know. And I'm like, "Well, yeah. I mean, there's countless people that have come through. I mean, you can look at our alumni page, but you name a few guys, and they say, oh, quickly, it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense, but I think being open-minded as a player and being a good team player can certainly open up avenues in the game of football for you down line, even if you're not the star player.
Yeah, especially if you're not the star player and you want to stay involved in football. There's some really great opportunities with what you're talking about. And the best players don't always make the best coaches. It's a totally different mindset. And I was talking about with a coach about a player who just picked up a couple of offers and wanted some information about him. And I mean, he's just gifted, right? Because people are just like, well, where's this kid? Well, he's just gifted. He's blessed with being a certain size, having a certain level of athleticism, and he looks the part. And there are guys who will work, right, and do everything, keep building themselves, but they're not going to be given that. And so it comes easier to him, right? And it's kind of an interesting situation because it comes easier to him, and he hasn't even dedicated himself to being the best football player he can be.
And he may not.
You
never know.
He may not, but he's going to have opportunity.
100%. When you're really athletic, you will.
Exactly. Whereas if you're that guy who you work, and you're not, blessed with the great bloodlines, the genes, whatever, and you still want to be involved with football, you have that passion, that love, there's that opportunity.
100%.
And
I would argue the guys that have the pedigrees, oftentimes their intricacy of knowing the game as a not to sound bad, but there's let's just say a very narrow view of like, hey, this is what I do. This is what I'm going to do. This is what I care about.
Yeah.
Fine. That's why offensive linemen, quarterbacks make really good guys to transition in the game, because they're a little bit more holistic at looking at like the whole field and like what's going on the entire play versus get me the ball.
Right.
Or I'm going to shut you down or whatever it might be. Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. And so you can see it kind of coming. And obviously there's a whole crop of guys that then also go coach high school football, right? And it's funny. I was reading a thing on one of the like a board post or whatever for Football Scoop, and a guy was talking about he was a young coach, 25, 26, and he had no life because he's cutting up film and he's doing this and doing that. And then an older coach wrote in and said, hey, if you do the math, whatever stipend you're getting is you're probably making 5 cents an hour, like one of those things, because there's so much time that goes in multiple days a week.
Paying your dues.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where like it's you got to be strategic about it, because if you think about it, if you say you're making at a JUCO, you're making, $25,000, right, to coach, or you're making a stipend of $4,000, right? Like there's only so much you can do time-wise, right? The parameters of practice and all that stuff, and then beyond practice. But that coach that's at the JUCO that's trying to grind and rise, theoretically could be doing as much work as the person that's doing the same amount of work making $550.
Correct.
Right. So like there's the haves and have nots. So like the other piece of advice I've seen work would be, if you're going to be a GA and you're a guy who wants to get into college coaching, shoot for as high, and this is no disrespect to lower levels, but shoot for as high as you can get. Like, yeah, Kalen DeBoer started out at a lower level school, but he ended up doing a really good job and then rising really quickly. But he left as a head coach at a NAIA to get himself into, being a coach as a position coach at SIU.
Right.
And then that started his, then all those guys, like the guys he was with, then have kind of spawned out, and then they've done their thing. But that doesn't work all the time, because there's a lot of guys that get caught at the D3 level and stay, and maybe that's where they want to stay.
Yeah.
But if you have aspirations of, like the higher level, like I've seen firsthand where guys do their GA ship at a big school, and then they get caught on with a group, and then they just kind of get pulled along as things occur, and they start winning and things like that, right? You got to be part of winning staffs, but they make friends along the way. I've also seen where guys do a GA or assistantship at a smaller NAIA or D3.
It can be rough,
and they get caught in that,
grind,
and it's a grind, and they're working their ass off, and they get burned out because there's
see it all the
not
time.
a lot of money flowing out, but they love the game. So you're going to work hard wherever you're at, right? And there's just like playing football. D3 guys are working their ass off, like they work hard.
Right. Network.
Yeah.
And whether it's at a conference or whether it's just meeting people wherever you're at, you got to do that
for sure.
I mean, that's just the name of the game. But Kalen DeBoer, how about him? He's landed pretty well. And when you look at the game, I guess we can go ahead and talk about the Alabama-Georgia game, which was just a phenomenal game to watch right down to the last minute, and just such a high level of athlete and a high level of skill, on display. That's what college football is all about, or it should be all about. But I mean, Saban left him with just gold to work with, right?
Yes.
To build with. And he's a really good coach himself. So when you're in that position, you're going to have success.
100%.
When you're a really good coach like him, and you come in and you have all the tools and weapons at your disposal, it's really not a surprise. Some people seem to be surprised for some reason that Alabama's back in the mix.
Like you said, the cupboard wasn't bare.
No, far from it.
Like we talked about, like Barry Odom inherited a pretty bare cupboard at Mizzou.
Right.
Then you take it on the chin.
Drink
did not inherit it.
Did not inherit, which is a huge leg up.
Yeah, and that's the cycles, right? Because Alabama has this air about them, and they have a system of how they recruited and what they did. So DeBoer's probably not too dumb. He's going to keep himself, like he's an astute, visit or viewership as when he was a coach coming up through the ranks of watching what Alabama was doing.
Oh yeah.
Why would you change too much of it? Put your own spin on it, but don't change it. And I think
it's like
Saban being there probably helps.
Yeah, somebody tosses the keys to a Porsche. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's already got gas.
You're not going to take it apart and rebuild it.
No. Hit the accelerator and go. So yeah, they look really good, JP. I mean, they're solid. Obviously, Kirby Smart, he's always got his teams ready. I mean, they were started a little slow, but damn, they finished. I mean, they tried to close the show out there. But
Right. No, that was one of the things I did hear was that Kirby Smart didn't have them ready.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
But they just had a few bad breaks early in the game where it's like, man, and they probably doing. If you think of it from the terms though of like the tough thing is like for Georgia, the last number of years playing Alabama, it was kind of like, hey, we know what we're going to get from Alabama, same staff, similar. I mean, even though Saban was changing, coordinators or guys. Right. Yeah. So he knows kind of what to expect. Well, now you got to get a little bit of a curveball with DeBoer and his whole staff because there's going to be a little bit different philosophy offensively, defensively. And obviously it works for Jalen Milroe.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt.
He looks better than he ever has.
He really does. And now you might be more familiar with him than I was, but I didn't know that he was as good as that. All that.
I tell you what, I think you could tell this watching him at the main passing academy. He can spin the ball, and you could tell he's clearly athletic. Mm-hmm. He's not as big as you think he is. Like he's a good size. Right. He's probably 6'1". Super down to earth guy though. Just like real, like I don't know, kind of interesting. Like you think he's gonna be like a boisterous, big name guy, but no. Right. I mean, just kind of good old Southern guy and just down to earth.
And it's fascinating. And there's some St. Louis connections down in Alabama and in Georgia as well. And I know dude that we're pretty high on, Jackson Cantwell. Of course, the whole world is, but been on the show. Just an impressive young man. I was talked to him 2 weeks ago, maybe a week ago, a little over a week ago. Just so impressive and just keeps getting better. Both as a person and as a player, just the maturity level that he's going to be down at the Georgia game because he's really. It seems like, and I'm putting words. I'm not. I have no idea what he's doing, but he seems to be really enthralled with both Georgia and Mizzou.
Yeah, that's what it looks like for his post. He had one. I saw he had a Mizzou glove on and a Georgia glove.
Well, a week or so ago, he had just Georgia gloves on, and so I think that with what's going on, and he likes to interact. He loves the process. He loves to interact with the fans and everything like that. And so I think he's just trying to show love for everybody. I think it would be pretty shocking if he didn't wind up in the SEC somewhere. And I mean, he can go any place he wants. But so yeah, and then of course Miles McVay.
Did you see him? He got a personal foul going into halftime.
Yeah, because
they had that little deal on the sideline. He went running in late. He didn't do anything. He kind of just. He ran into, I think he was going to grab a guy, and they called, of all the people, there was other guys pushing, shoving. He got it because he did run in pretty fast, but he didn't like push anybody. I think he bumped into his own teammate is what it looked like, but he got a flag thrown on him, which,
Miles is just a hyped up guy.
Yeah.
He's just an excitable young man.
Yes, he is. He's a hell of a kid. He's a worker too. He's one of those kids that has not stopped since he's gotten to college. He's got a hard-nosed work ethic. He's kind of fallen victim a little bit with the big left tackle that's the starter who was there, freshman, the top-rated lineman in the country. He leaves. He goes back to Iowa. He's going to decommit, and then he comes back.
Right.
Then he's going to leave again, and then he stays.
Right.
To me, I don't care how talented you are. You get guys that are bouncing around like that. At some point, you go with the guys that are loyal, that are part of it.
Without question. So, Miles' turn will come, and he'd be a good person to get on the show and just talk about his journey.
Yeah,
because he's fascinating, and he's another guy. Just watching him from like 7th, 8th grade, I think you've been training him for longer than that. Maybe.
Yeah, second grade.
You see, Matt gets these kids when they're like 2nd grade, and
it's crazy.
But it's interesting that where they wind up when they start training that early, which is, something to talk about. But Miles is a guy who's just interested. I mean, you're 6'7", you're 350, 60 pounds, whatever. You're going to dominate some guys if you have any kind of athleticism and all. And he did. But just the work he put in to become a better player, because I'll tell you what, when I first saw him in 7th, 8th grade, he was soft. And that's not something I would say to his face right now. You're soft.
No. He definitely changed himself.
He changed himself, and just watching him in training, watching him in drills, with the alligator arms and just not taking advantage of his size. But now he was training against high school guys, so it was, which ultimately made him better.
Which made him, it definitely benefited him.
But just the work that watching him year after year put in, and not just his skills, but transforming his body. Ultimately, I mean, just watching things click in these young guys' minds to where it's like, okay, now I got to do this. Yeah, I understand what I've been told. Now I got to do this. Because you could tell some guys, every day of the week, twice on Sundays, do this, do this, do this, and it will not register, will not click, and they won't do it.
JP, you hit on it before. You're talking about the other guy. There's, some people have been given all these gifts. And they don't work with it, right? And it's just like, and it's just so frustrating as a coach. But like what do they say? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? I also always say, hey, God will give you a bunch of gifts, but He ain't gonna do it all for you. He's gonna have some inefficiencies, whether that's, let's say He gives you every physical skill, great. 9 times out of 10, those guys that have all the physical skills have a deficiency in concentration, discipline, attention to detail, whatever it might be, right? Discipline. And so, like, it's frustrating as a coach because then you have a guy that doesn't have any athletic ability, who has all the concentration, all the willpower, all the stick-to-itness, all that stuff, and he's never going to outshine that more athletic kid when that more athletic kid's playing hard, right? And so that's what's so difficult, as a coach. You gotta figure out how to pull that out of people. And make them rise up and meet their deficiencies, right? You maybe not overcome every one of them, but but a lot of times and then they start getting recruited, and everybody thinks that their stuff doesn't stink, and you can't tell them.
Offers, right?
To me, that's the kiss of death. Like what we've talked about, your kid gets an offer, and he was a hardcore trainer, doing a bunch of things focused on it, and you see him stop,
right?
Or he never trained with to begin with. I mean, it's a kiss of death because they think, oh, I'm just going to show up. There's very few. What is it? What's the 17-year-old receiver, Ryan Williams? What's his name?
Ryan Williams. Yeah, down in Alabama.
Yeah. So he's 17, right? Which is funny. Going down, we were both on Gulf Shores. You drive down, you go through where he's from, Saraland, which is just as you're coming out of out of Mississippi down into the bottom half of Alabama, on the far western edge of it, and it's a great high school. I mean, they have a really nice program.
Yeah.
But yeah,
a little bit of a depressed area.
Imagine him playing high school football this year.
Isn't it crazy?
Like the stuff that he did in that game as a 17-year-old it's really unthinkable. But I think he's got a personality. He's posting pictures. Apparently he had posted a picture after the game of on his profile of Mike Vick holding a little puppy dog, kind of like just interesting. I think he's he's got some shock factor.
Yeah.
And
he's a really personable guy. Oh yeah.
But he is going to, if he keeps his head on straight, write his own ticket, right? He's going to write his own ticket on NIL. He's going to write his own ticket for the NFL. So he's just got to stay healthy and keep doing what he's doing.
Right.
But that catch at the end of the game and that move that he put was just so unorthodox. You don't see many people ever pull it off in a game, let alone try to pull it off.
Alabama has a couple of freshmen who are just it's like crazy.
Yeah.
And I know people, don't always want to put everything in, and I'm not even talking about stars, but recruiting is everything. The amount of talent that you get, that level of talent, it makes your job so much easier.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it really is the lifeblood. Coaching's great, but you know it too. You can see a halfway decent coach do great things with top-notch talent.
Right. And if really at that point, it's just the coach effectively communicating to get people to be where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there, right?
And not mess them up.
Not get too much in their way, right? Just line them up and get them to where they're supposed to be, and let your quarterback make a decision and put the ball in their hands.
And that's what you aspire to. Speaking of NIL, interesting development at UNLV, I guess last week, where their starting quarterback, what is his name?
Matthew Sluka.
Quit over NIL, which is the first we've seen of this, right? Or at least that we know that we've seen of this. So basically, like a pro player, I'm done.
I'm holding out.
I'm holding out. Right. It's a holdout.
In-season holdout,
which is just amazing. And a great story for their quarterback is his name Hodge?
Yes, Hodge.
can't remember his last name, but young quarterback just put under the gun, because UNLV is having a very successful season.
Yeah.
And so this is what's the crazy part. So I don't know what the record is. Are they undefeated?
They're 4-0.
Or 4. So they're 4.
They just came off of a bye week. Just played Fresno State.
4-0. Your starting quarterback, or 3-0. Your starting quarterback holds out over dispute with NIL. So you know the story a little bit.
So yeah, I mean, from what I can gather and what I've heard, it sounds like he got an agent well after the fact, right?
Yeah.
So
who told him he wasn't appreciated enough,
right? And so like you can kind of like see this through, right? So you have a kid that comes, he's at a FCS school, Holy Cross, who is he pretty much was done. They had a bunch of guys leave there. Tyler Purdy, one of those kids who transferred to James Madison,
doing
who
great.
Just got a scholarship.
Yep.
Okay, so think about this. Tyler Purdy was one of the top kids on that Holy Cross team. He did grad school at James Madison because he's a smart kid, great guy. He went there, probably got a little NIL, but didn't have a scholarship. They just gave him a scholarship.
Yeah, could play any place in the country, and that guy could have done it coming out of high school.
Right, and so now he's there. He does really good. They gave him a scholarship last week after their big victory over, I forgot who they beat, split by 70 points.
Yeah.
So use that as a framework. So Sluka was a good quarterback at Holy Cross, but he's also coming from a Division I non-scholarship. Well, I guess they do have some. Excuse me, they used to be non-scholarship. They are now, but they don't. It's not free flowing. Everybody's not there on a full ride.
Holy Cross.
Everybody's not there on a full ride. There's guys that have obviously do have full rides, but there's other guys that don't.
Right, you're not coming from Alabama to UNLV.
Correct. So he gets there. His claim is that he was told by an assistant that he would get $100,000 in NIL. My question would be is why wasn't that negotiated and put in writing by the collective? Because the school can't pay him, right? Isn't paying him,
right?
So he didn't have a deal with them. So the person told him that. So it seems a little naive to me that they would go into that situation.
Yeah.
It does make sense that, there's been reports that said all financial commitments that they had signed him on his contract had been met, right? Or were in the process of being fulfilled, right? So, it came down to he got $3,000 to move for moving expenses, and then he got $3,000 a month. So ended up being like $12,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
The reality of it is, it's not like he was coming there and he was an unbelievable quarterback. He was a good quarterback, but he's stepping up. So he's going to have to be a guy.
A name.
And so they go 3-0. They have a big win over Kansas, which now looks not as good of a win because everybody else has beaten Kansas as well. So Kansas is kind of falling back in line where we thought they used to be, right? And just kind of it is what it is. So they have that scenario. So the guy gets an agent. He's kind of a hot name now. He's on a 3-0. Now that's the first time they've ever been ranked, since the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And now suddenly it comes out that he's demanding essentially. And the school has then said, we cannot pay for play. That is illegal per NCAA guidelines.
But he wants to renegotiate.
And the SEC and the collective, I forgot the name of their collective for UNLV who handles that, said, hey, look, we never dealt with this guy to begin with. He didn't have an agent. Oh, by the way, he didn't register with the state of Nevada, which now is a really bad look.
Yep.
And oh, by the way, it sounds like reading between the lines that they were asking for more money in season. They did not give it to him. Maybe knowing that in the back of their head, hey, we're going to have to make a change at quarterback because this guy is at 45% completion percentage. He's running well.
Yeah.
But this freshman quarterback or younger quarterback had not even played but a few plays. So they go in, they're playing Fresno State, who was 3-1, and they beat them, and they beat them handily.
Right.
So to me, it sounds like the program rallied, because you and I know if that was a real problem in the locker room, that team would have disintegrated.
Oh,
they would
100%.
not have played as a team.
Right.
They would not have come out and rallied together and won. It would be a really simple solution for them just to be like, yeah, we're all done, right? We're out.
Right.
They didn't do that. They won. So that tells me Coach Odom's got a really good handle on his system and his team. But yeah, the whole thing brings up a larger question, right? You negotiate these NIL deals. I mean, first of all, if someone's telling you they're going to give you $100,000, you might want to get it in writing. any of you people that have ever done a legal agreement, right? It just went through on a lease and with one of our businesses. Look, they send you a lease, you read through it, your lawyer reads through it, they redline it, they said they correct what they don't like
Right.
in language wise, they send it back,
Yeah.
and then it's a back and forth, it's a negotiation, and then from there. But you don't negotiate after the fact, you negotiate before. And so I think that's the tough thing is you start looking like, hey, look, you're asking for money now because you think you got us in a bad position because you can redshirt. They allowed him to. And then he's not a part of the program anymore. And it'll be curious to see how other programs perceive that. Because, I read an article where they're like, well, Barry Odom can never come to Arkansas now because, he's going to have a mark by his name. And I would argue
absolutely wrong.
I would argue the contrary.
First of all, a Mizzou fan.
Yeah. First of all, the school can't negotiate it. Missouri's different. University of Missouri, because of our NIL laws, we can. The head coach can actually negotiate. That's not how it is in Nevada. So it's got to be between the collective or whoever the NIL entity is. And, most of that stuff gets reported. I don't know that all of it gets reported yet legally, but eventually it's going to have to be. Just so they can track it. But you're supposed to give all your NIL deals that you have to the school so they know, right? So they have to buy off that it's, that it's legit.
Right.
And so I think someone overplayed their hand. That's what it sounds like.
I think to me, it sounds like the quarterback got bad advice.
Yeah.
Right. And somebody told him, hey, we got leverage. Let's use it. And, it's great to have representation, but you also have to use your own common sense and your own brain. You can't just be led down the primrose path.
And he probably knows, like, hey, throwing at 45, 50%, like, I'm not going to make the NFL. So I got to make as much money as I possibly can.
Right. But three games in.
Yeah. And the other thing is, to think about, and this is the first thing that kind of came to my head was, okay, when I heard that the agent entered late.
Yeah.
What that says to me is, well, if he entered late, he's not getting paid on anything he didn't negotiate, right? So he's not going to earn any money on that. He's only going to earn on future earnings. And so, what's the best way to get future earnings? Man, they need to pay you. You should be getting paid.
Right.
Oh, they're not going to pay you. Oh, they're disrespecting you. You should hold out, and then we'll get you to go somewhere in the spring and play next year.
Well, yeah. I mean, they clearly, whoever is giving him advice, whoever's advising him, thought that this is the best leverage that they're ever going to have.
Right.
And pull that trigger now, which was a dumb move. I mean, it's 3 games in.
A bad look.
Yeah. It's just a bad look all the way around. And I mean, I'm curious as like who would want to have that kind of representation again? Because where does he go from here? And now? I mean, who's going to take him? Who's going to take a chance on him?
Let's be realistic too. College coaches. I mean, someone tells you they could give you $100,000, and your deal ends up being for $12,000.
Yeah,
because he's only going to be there for 1 year. The kid's done.
Right.
The other thing is too, like, since he redshirted this year, I thought for some reason I was thinking he was a 6-year guy. So he clearly wasn't a 6-year guy. So he must have been a 5th. I don't know, because I thought the guys that had the extra COVID year were done after this year. So I don't know. But long story short, he did redshirt. He got his bluff called, and then of course there was damage control. But I just thought the university, when they came out, because they could only say so much,
right?
And the head coach can't really comment on it. So, because again, they're not negotiating it. So all this is going to change too, and it only drives home the reason that we believe that once all this stuff and they start paying it through the budgets, they're going to start paying the athletes with the revenue share.
Yep.
There's going to be a day in time where there's collective bargaining, which I don't know that helps college football. I think anytime you get a situation with collective bargaining, when your constituents are only there for 4 and 5 year increments, the advantage goes to the house. It's not to the athletes. So in the NFL with collective bargaining, the average NFL career is over 2.5, 3 years, but there's stalwarts that are in there. There's guys that, the old guys that have hung around that are far more invested and kind of know the game. So there's some better representation, I think. But when you have a known group of people that maximum they're going to be there is 5 years, with the vast majority being in any one school for 2.5, 3 years,
right,
the advantage is going to go to the schools. And so I think that, they got to be very careful when they get involved and believing every one of these bargaining deals, right? And then next thing you know, we're gonna have a college football strike, right?
Yeah.
And so I think while I'm all for getting what you're due, you got to be careful going down pathways that seem that the people representing you are in your best interest, because like I think if you were to ask that Matthew Saluka today, he's probably in the back of his head got some doubts going on, like, ooh, did I make the right decision?
Yeah.
Because if UNLV keeps rolling, it's going to make him look.
Yeah.
It's going to make him look a little egg on the face, right?
A lot
of egg on the face.
A lot of. But it's interesting that like this is something new, and this is a new challenge that's going on, and it's just going to keep ramping up year after year after year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just fascinating to see where people go. Like local guys, we know where they pick schools, because we know like the inside business a little bit of what goes on with guys and what's offered to them and this and that. And it's just the whole thing. I mean, it's it was a business before, but now it's really a business, professional football. In my opinion,
it is.
And I know people don't like to hear that, but
it is interesting. They use this subject will be another reason why they want to get rid of NIL as with the collectives.
Right.
I don't know if that's going to ever happen. Once that bag was opened, you're not getting it. Closed back in.
Colleges, no,
because
it's just going to get more where you're going to have to pay them eventually.
Well, I still think it's going to come down to the high school level at some point, because you get a kid that's a superstar, 5-star, and a Misha is telling them they can't get paid. Well, that's exactly,
or they can't transfer,
and that's exactly what led the NCAA. And let's be honest, the NCAA at least has some financial wherewithal to fight it. Misha or the one in Michigan or one in Louisiana or California, like, where's their money going to come from? The gate from a district football game? I mean,
$5.
Yeah, like selling online subscriptions to football games. Like, I mean, come on. There's no real money backing these organizations. They're essentially volunteer organizations.
And quite frankly, I mean, when we talk about the transfer situation, I mean, you don't want everybody just transferring a different school every year but I think it's ridiculous. And there's some people that there are a couple of players who just really been hurt so far this year with the transfer rule.
Well,
and with people trying to block them and, making a kid go halfway across the country, another kid hasn't been able to play. It's like, what, and it's everybody involved. It's all the adults involved. You can't get together. You can't just let this work out, but people are eventually going to sue.
Because there are definitely feelings that get hurt.
Yeah.
And logic sometimes is not, an erring on, like, look, I've personally been involved with like a situation this year where, like a rule interpretation with a young kid in an elementary school age or early middle school age. And you say, hey, what's the right thing? The right thing is to let the kid play football.
Yeah.
Right. The kid can't
let him play football.
Like, okay, I know you think there's an advantage being had, but really, if you take a step back, there's no advantage. The kid gets to play football. Like, at the end of the day, it wasn't like the kid was recruited to play. And I think that happens at high school sometimes.
Wow.
There are certain coaches that are, hey, and ADs that are like, hey, man, whatever. It is what it is. We hate to see you go. But if they check that box for athletic reasons, you're in trouble. Like, it's tough. Like, and I've been involved in so many of these situations where, years ago, there was a guy that, a kid who transferred from a public school that had just won state. He wanted to go to a smaller private school for some personal reasons. And the box, apparently, the athletic reasons got checked, right?
Yeah.
Accidentally, right? Inadvertently.
Yeah.
Well, that triggered a whole bunch of things, and whatever. But they had to, a principal from the school where it happened had to go and say, hey, this was not right. This is whoever did this. This was, it was unintentional. But the kid had to fight, and he missed the game. All that kind of stuff. So it's like, like, who are we damaging when we get involved in these things? And I think, yes, if there's kids, if there are kids blatantly abusing the system, and it's obvious, right? then maybe, yeah, there's times and places for those restrictions and
if you're a kid who's transferring 2 counties away from your school, and it's a private to public situation or vice versa, you're being petty. I'm sorry, and I don't want to upset anybody, but
well, how about going from one state to the other?
Yeah, I mean that's incredibly petty.
I still don't understand what legal basis someone would have if someone moves. Like, where in the world would they have the right to say you can't? Like, if someone picks up their residence and moves, and then somebody says, "Well, yeah, they moved for athletic reasons." Well, whose business is that to begin with? There's probably a myriad of other reasons that someone would pick up their house and move,
right?
Other than football, right? I mean, football might be important to all of us, but it's not. At the end of the day, like, you don't just pick up your house and move from one place to the other,
right?
Because your kid wants to play football.
Or what if you have 2 residencies?
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean? I mean, who's going to tell you can't have 2 residencies and you were living here, but now you're going to live here and you're going to rent this property? Well, no, we're not. I mean, we saw that happen last year with a young man who's a very talented lineman that we know, and all this is doing is hurting the kids.
Yeah, you don't. Why would you? Yeah, why would you rent 2 houses? Well,
right.
Whose business is it? Yours.
Exactly. And so it's
you have to sell that house, is what they were told. Well, why would we sell that house when it's prime? Rental market where we can rent it. Like, well, who are you? Like, are you going to pay the real estate taxes? You going to pay like what?
So at some point, somebody's probably going to be like, okay, that's enough. Or some attorney's going to be like, hey, guess what? There's some money to be made here. I'm going to challenge this stuff, and we're going to see what we can do.
Yeah,
because like you said, it is interfering with people. Now, luckily, there's a young man who's not being allowed to play right now, and all he does is just keep stacking up D1 offers anyway, right? So what are you doing?
The problem is, though, for that young man, it screws them in the sense of development, right? Yes. Because you want to develop through the process, right? And a lot of those early offers on someone like that is just based off purely off of like potential.
Well, yeah,
right.
I mean, that's kind of everybody.
But you want to hone that potential through games and competition and learning experiences, right?
Right.
What's the learning experience when you can go play JV?
Right. Yeah. No, you're right. And now, luckily for him, he is that talented and that advanced of an athlete and skill wise that it will hold him back slightly as far as his development, but in the overall picture, unless they just like, okay, well, you can't play the rest of your high school career. He's young enough.
Yeah.
Now, when you're a senior and they do something like that to you, and then they're like, here, you go play in prep school halfway across the country. I mean, that's
by the way, the kid that happened to, Jason Wiley, is killing it. He's doing awesome.
He would do that. He would be doing that here if he was at East St. Louis. He would.
But you just wonder if that's the impetus to control that is like, hey, and clearly like he got in trouble at school. Like it is what it is. Kids make mistakes, but like I've seen way worse mistakes where kids got to play.
So the initial punishment, he was punished.
Yeah, right.
So then he's going to go somewhere else. So you want to punish him more? I mean, at what point? What's the deal there? You just let it go. Everything was okay. Things happen. Move on. That's what I don't get. It's like, why can't people move on? And especially,
I think people get in that maybe don't have all the details or don't know whatever. So yeah, it sucks, right? But I think also at the same time, like I do like to see when that happens and you see the kid overcome, right, and persevere.
Yes,
because that lesson is going to be, but it's an expensive lesson. I mean, because you have your kid.
Do it.
You have your kid living in another 10 states away,
right?
You can't go watch them play. You got to watch it online. I mean, that's hard to watch, right?
Exactly.
So it's hard to deal with,
especially for something that's not super egregious,
Right. Yeah.
And like I said, they're going to play in another state. They're going to play so many counties away from you.
Here's what I found though. The people that scream the loudest about the rules and this and that. I mean, I'm witnessing it right now on a personal deal. The people that scream the loudest about others in their infractions oftentimes are the ones that the rules don't apply to them.
Correct.
Right. And it's so frustrating to see it. I also kind of the opinion that eventually it will kind of clear itself out and everything that's done in dark will be shown in light, right? Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like you can pretend that you are doing all these things by the rules, and then and call other people out. But if you're not following the rules, why do you think you're not going to get punished, right? Like it's bizarre to me. But I've seen it in the junior football ranks. I've seen
it for thee, but not for me.
Yeah,
is what it is. And the best revenge is always living well.
Yeah, right.
So you like to see these guys be successful, and I think it's great whether it's Jason out there doing really well, or the other young man who just keeps stacking up big time offers.
Yep.
Good for you. Clearly the colleges don't care.
I think that becomes even a bigger kind of thing, because a lot of guys are like get mad that
they think they're in control.
They think they're in control. It's like no. At the end of the day,
you're gonna leave me. I'm gonna ruin your life.
Yeah.
It's like what
which is just unfortunate. I mean, it's unfortunate, and I think
or hold you back.
You look yourself in the mirror and say, "Hey, what am I doing? What's best? Right? Do I have my moral compass on? Am I doing what's best? Is someone around me doing things that they shouldn't be?" Well, if you're in the power and they're not, they're not living to that standard, you gotta call them out on it, right?
Yeah.
So, but
eventually, I think hopefully we'll get to a point where everybody's just like, okay, let's part ways. Whatever. What's done is done. Good luck. That's what you hope for, because in the end, it should be about the kids.
Yeah.
And it should be about their future. And you wanting to hold somebody back from playing a particular year. I don't know how you think that's in a kid's best interest, regardless of what the reason is. I mean, if you're, you can't let kids transfer every year, to a different school.
But if a family moves,
I mean,
come on.
Family wants to make a personal decision, that's.
Or if they say there's issues at a school, right?
Correct,
and
right.
a kid needs to get out of there if it's best for them and their mental, well-being, or their spiritual health, whatever it is. Who are you to say that they can't, right? And I guess that's where, I will say that I have seen Misha be much better the last couple of years, where
something's going on,
where there's some, there's some compassion, and they're like, because they understand, like, there's some fluidity in housing, there's fluidity in economics, there's changes going on, right? And so to be blind to that would be really, really snubbing your nose at a lot of kids who just want an opportunity to play. Right.
And they want that best opportunity. We've talked about it before, where, where's the best opportunity that's going to help them, whether, especially with college football becoming more of a pay for play type of a deal, you're going to hold that person back from having their best opportunity to make money in the future. That's going to be a problem down the line.
That usually becomes, so you get antitrust, things like that.
Right.
That you start, and it sounds silly, but I go back to a question I asked a number of weeks ago, right? So, it's Missouri State Athletic and Activities Association, right?
Yep.
I think that's it.
Misha. Yeah.
So if a kid transfers schools and is in the marching band or the chess club, that is a sanctioned Missouri activity, is there any such, issues to prohibit them from being eligible?
Well, I guess it depends on if the music director feels that the other school offered their second tuba player something.
Right. I mean, but is that box check? Is that even a question that's asked? I don't know.
Something to check out.
Yeah. So one of our AD friends that listens should ask us, let us know and enlighten us.
Let us know how that works.
Because here's the thing, though, if that isn't, then I would want to know, what is the delineation? Why are you putting more value on this as a sport, where a kid can go to college and get a scholarship for band or cheerleading, whatever it might be, right? If a kid wants to leave, are they ineligible from participating in an activity? Because then that's a slippery slope. Because why are you're
opening up a can of worms there.
Why is this group being treated differently from this group?
Right.
And there's equal protections, right? Like the law, when you start getting into things like in public education, you start treating one group differently than the other, right? And they're under the same umbrella. It'd be one thing if it was just clubs and and then athletic activities like here, and then there's this activities group that's over here, but they are under the same umbrella. So I would what's the delineation? Why is there not equal protection? If maybe there is, why are these guys treated separately? I would love to know that.
You can tell you spend a lot of time around legal minds, and I've had a lot
because you know what, when you own a small business, you have to be on your toes.
And family members. And,
yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah, but I've been like really
that fascinates
intrigued by what's going on in college football. Like it's super intriguing to me.
So those discussions you and your brother have?
Yeah, I've talked to him. Just like, what do you think about this? And I think it is interesting, like knowing the legal side, because I'm not a lawyer, right? But there is that legal perspective that you start to learn when you're doing leases and you're doing contracts with people. And you start to realize like how it really works.
Yes.
And that's why I just think the Matthew Saluka thing is a little. If they were smart enough to go get an agent, but they did it late, I think that is after the fact realize like, or
did the agent come get them?
Yeah, right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like, oh, this guy's killing it, and then so I think, and that's where we have a bunch of kids in college right now that have agents, right? And they're NIL agents. You hope that they're being treated fairly, but you don't know. Like where's the governing body? Like NFLPA, I can tell you this for a fact. Say you sign to a NFL deal, right? So you get undrafted free agent or you're drafted, whatever. That lawyer agent who takes that contract, I've witnessed this happen at my dining room table. They get the contract, the kid signs it. That legal contract goes and needs to be overread by the NFLPA lawyers to make sure it's all boilerplate, but they check it for state laws,
funny business,
right? Yeah. Anything that can happen. The NFLPA will overread that, and for sure they will make sure that there's no funny business in there, right? Yep. Because every state has different work comp laws, every state has different eligibility laws for like if a guy's active roster, inactive, whatever it might be, and how they get paid. And so like a lot of that varies from contract to contract. So the NFLPA definitely does. Is that happening for NIL? Absolutely not. So who should help with that? Probably if they get a union, that would help, but there's going to be issues with that. So I don't know. There's a lot of changes coming.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be fun to see how it evolves.
Yeah, from the state of it is going to be fun to see how it all plays out.
I can't wait to see all the arguments about the top 12 teams that get to go into that.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have a bunch of 1-loss, 2-loss teams vying to get in there. And I'll just call it out. Like Miami. What a joke. Like, look at their schedule. You look at their schedule. Like, they lost. I mean, I don't know. Did you see the end of their Virginia Tech game?
I didn't know.
They lost the game Friday night. Like, they lost. They got scored on, game over. It got overturned. And it's almost as if, well, this is our last hope as the ACC to get anybody in the playoff, and we need that money.
Yep.
I mean, that's what it appeared like. And if you were on social media, that was the prevailing attitude. Like, that was a bad call. I mean, it was a last minute. I mean, hey, Miami battled back. Cam Ward's a hell of a quarterback. They're not a top 10 team.
Right. Well, this is part of the problem with, college football becoming a professional league. Once the money gets involved, it changes everything. So we're almost out of time, but halfway point of high school season, 5-0, the midseason is what it is. And just some interesting looks, a lot of good games. We were talking about the bad weather on Friday. I was at St. Mary's just scouting some guys, and when I arrived there, it was that torrential rain. The rain's coming at you sideways, so it didn't matter whether you had an umbrella or what. But luckily, it cleared up. But it turned out to be a pretty good game. Chaminade pulling it out.
St. Mary's they fought
St.
hard.
Mary's was without their best player, so their top player, their running back, was out. But it was a good game. Good game, and Madden Irving, just an absolute stud.
Mm-hmm. He was over 200 yards, right?
Over 200 yards, but that's kind of his MO. He's just a little bowling ball, who's just tough to bring down, and he, he can also catch the ball.
I was going to say he can catch the ball in the backfield for sure.
Chaminade's an interesting program. They've got some players. Dakari Weaver, just an absolute stud. Some colleges need to pick up on him. Christian Funches, who was out last year, is back. And then St. Mary's, you want to talk about an up-and-coming team. Just a bunch of really talented young guys, a really nice quarterback, Mo Barnes. Sometimes he goes by Smith is the last name, but Jamarian Barnes, just really good. Some nice young receivers. So that was a good game. And then, we're at the halfway point, and I look at like the media top rankings, which rankings are so subjective. It really doesn't pay to pay attention to them. I mean, clearly there's some things that jump out there. Like you're going to look at Alabama, you're going to look at Georgia. You can't really argue what they are. But Class 6, they have Rockhurst, who's 5-0, number 1. CBC is a heck of a story, in my opinion, because they're ranked number 2 at 4-1, and a lot of people just kind of wrote them off and just didn't think they.
And let me tell you, their one loss, they beat every single kid. That team from Arkansas, Bryant, beats every team in St. Louis.
Oh,
for sure.
Yeah, they're just a huge program. But CBC's 4-1, and you got to give all the credit in the world to Nick McClellan, who was just at Purdue this past weekend. But man, what a story for him. He's really, and I know you work with him, so I know you can talk to it more, but just his development as quarterback.
He is such a good kid. I mean,
he really is.
He is. He's well-grounded. He understands the situation he's in. He knows that this team needs him, and he's doing a hell of a job. I mean, he had a 95-yard run. I was watching it online when it happened. I was like, whoa. I mean, nothing more demoralizing where someone's got you kind of pinned in, well coverage, and then he splits the defense and takes it to the house. I mean,
just the transition that he's made from the end of last year in that championship game against Liberty, where he was thrown into the mix and was playing and was basically running for his life and trying to protect himself. Thankfully, he didn't get really hurt. But that transition from then to now, amazing. And that's just all him putting in that
working his butt off. And the crazy thing is he's still working on his defensive back skills because which he's not getting to play much. That's where he's going to play in college, right? He's got schools that love seeing him. Yeah, I mean, like
you could brother.
He's pretty easy to project. Like, hey, we're going to put him somewhere.
Yes.
Right. He's got the ball in his hand every play for CBC, and it's working out well.
Really good athlete, and quite frankly, I mean, just that him being a quarterback might be holding back a little bit of his recruitment because a lot of schools don't necessarily have the ability to project like that.
They should, but
they should, but a lot of them, their evaluation process doesn't do that probably. So CBC number 2 at 4-1. Nixa, who I saw a couple weeks ago, 5-0, really good team, going to really surprise some teams on the west side of the state in the playoffs. I mean, they have a total package. They have a nice stud quarterback, sophomore, 6'4", 190-pound kid, Anna McKnight. Really talented little running back, Dylan Ribera. Their offensive line literally goes like 6'9", 315, 6'5", 290. Their smallest guy is 6'3", 245.
Okay.
On a high school level, that's their smallest guy. Everybody else is like 290 and up. So they're gonna, and they have a really talented defense too, which doesn't get a lot of credit. Lee Summit North, who I've watched, also 5-0. Don't know why a lot of people didn't really give them the respect that I guess it's the coaching change.
Yeah,
maybe, but the talent's just there. Desmet coming in at number 5 at 4-1, really put it on Vianney. I think they were a little upset about what happened the week before against CBC. And so they just really put on Dylan Duff, another really good game. I know he was banged up a little bit. I guess he's doing better.
Yeah, he's out there ripping it up.
He's out there ripping it up. Another 224 yards, 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He just does his thing. Blue Spring South, another good team. Liberty North, Lee Summit, a team I've seen really good. Seckman's always undefeated, seems like it's going into the playoffs. They've got another good team. And then Liberty North, who a lot of people had number 1 in the preseason, comes in at number 10. They're 3-2. And a team that's really a surprise in Class 6 is not a surprise, but I think it's going to surprise a lot of people. I don't understand why they're not higher. It's Rockbridge. It's 4-1.
How about Eureka? Are they not on there?
Eureka is in Class 5.
They're 5. Oh, they're 5.
Yeah,
that was 6.
Surprisingly, on the in the media thing, they've got Eureka tied at 6.
See, I think that's wrong. But you talk about another big line. My God.
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
they're massive.
Thing. Yeah. What's their smallest guy? I think maybe their center.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, everybody's trees.
Everybody's 6'4", 6'5", just, and so they're
at 6.
They're it's really weird. And I mean, and I don't know whether they base this based upon records or what. Cardinal Ritter, of course.
I have no problem with that.
I mean, Cardinal Ritters, if you just take all of them, probably the number 1 team in the state. Yeah. Regardless of class, they're just killing it and beating everybody. You pick a state, they're going to go.
Let me tell you, when you have a quarterback that plays at that level, it's hard to beat them.
I'm telling you what, Illinois fans should be really, really happy. They're just
They need
getting,
to circle the wagons.
they really
Make
do.
sure he doesn't get out of there.
Absolutely. If I was another school, I'd be like, hey,
Yeah.
hey, because he does it all. You want to talk about somebody who's ripping off 80, 90-yard runs, as
It's
well
funny,
as
yeah. He's a guy like
over
I was talking to
300.
my son about. Like, hey, you want to pattern your run game off of
Yes.
this because he is. When he decides to go, he goes. Like there's no hesitation.
There's not. And again, we talked about it before. It's at a different level. It's at a different speed
100%.
for Carson. And so it's almost like the Matrix to where you like he's doing this and everybody else is moving at a different speed than him. And he just knows where he's going. And everybody else,
Isaiah Williams-esque. It's what it
very
looks like
much
from
so,
a running perspective.
but with an unbelievable skill set as a thrower. So yeah, he's Platte County, another quarterback who we know doing really well. Rocco Marriott. They're they're at 5-0. We're going over here. I'll be out of here in just a second. St. Pius at the 10th in KC. Carthage, who I got to see play against Nixa. Really good team, but Nixa is just so dominant. Hawaiius, we were talking about Weiss Carver. His team is 4-1. They lost to Rockbridge.
In a barn burner.
Again, that Rockbridge team, Brady Davidson. I mean, my goodness.
He's a dude.
He is a dude. Can run, can throw. Northern Illinois also better circle the wagons. Try to hold on to him. And then, of course, you drop down to 4. Lutheran North, #1 team, 4-1. I see kind of like a head-on collision with them and Kearney from out in the Kansas City area in the end. But Mizzou was a bye weekend. We didn't really get a chance to talk to them like we kind of wanted to. But
big game coming up with Texas A&M
on the road. You're really going to find out how you are at this. This is really going to be an experience.
They'll set the tone.
They'll
set the tone for the rest of the season. I think they are definitely heading into the meat of their. I mean, they have UMass, but other than that, I mean, they have a tough schedule. I mean, it's everybody thinks it's easy. Well, it's the SEC. We saw with Vanderbilt. Yeah. Nothing's easy.
Oh, no. The grind is coming up.
Yep.
So you're going to find out. So buckle up on that one. Anything else going on? Anything you got going on this weekend?
No, just more football.
More football.
Fun little stuff. Kid stuff.
Out on the road.
Flag football. I think
I'm going to check out some of that mid-mo football because there's some stuff going on there. Some really good teams, some really good players out there. So I think that's going on with me, along, of course, with St. Louis sandwiched in there as well.
Let's go.
But it's been great. You always, if you have a question for us, you can go football360show.com. You can check out everything Football 360 Show at that domain. You can also catch us, as you can see on the screen if you're watching. JP Rock MO, JP Rock Scout Shoes. My social, Matt's social is
Elite Football at X and Elite Football Academy on Instagram.
Drop us a line, drop us a question, as a lot of you do. And we'll find that out. Also if you just want to listen to this again, you catch it on Apple as well as Spotify as well. Football 360 Show. Another great show in the books. We will talk to you next week. Everybody stay safe, play well, and we'll talk to you next week. See ya.